Rev up your engines! Kevin Lewis says, with the shortage of new cars, you think buying a new one these days, the value won't drop when driving off the lot. Yes, in the short run, that is true. I have actually had customers have year or two old vehicles, and they sold them for more money than they paid for them, which was impossible in the past. Just realize a lot of this is relatively short term. So, I mean, you go out and buy a $45,000 car today. Who knows what's going to be like 2 or 3 years from now, and the value will probably go right back down like they normally do. It's just that there's a shortage now, so the markets doesn't have enough sellers and a lot of buyers, so the price goes up. Eventually, when they start making them in mass and there's more of them out there, people will start selling them cheaper because there'll be a bigger market and people have more to choose from. And when they don't, you got no choice. You want to buy a house and the market's high, you got to pay what the market is. But then, if the interest rates go up and the economy starts to have a recession, the price of the houses starts going down. These people that are paying $800,000-900,000 for houses, I saw that in Houston myself years ago. They went for $300,000 a couple years later when the economy tanked. So don't bank on keeping your value on a new car for all that long. The economy can change like the wind. New Wave Market said, Scotty, I got a 2015 Camry, fully paid for. I have 2 vehicles. My Camry just sits. Do you think I should sell it? It depreciates every year. Well, if you need the money and you're not using it, what the heck, sell it. They're going for a lot of money. You could get a lot of money for it today. If you can, sell it. Make some money. If you're not using it, there's no point. A car just sits there and rots. The electronics, the metal rust, everything starts rusting. If you're not using it, you could probably get good money for it now. Sell it now while the market's high. If you're not using it, what the heck? Somebody will be happy to get a good Camry. Wilhelmina says, my car smells like crayons and I can't figure it out. The car smells like crayons. Obviously, you don't see any anywhere, right? Here's what can happen, and I've seen it happen many times. Kids are playing around, especially if they're sitting in the front. They got crayons. They drop them on the intake. They get into the HVAC system, heating and air conditioning, right? They get in there. Now, get a flashlight, and sometimes it's easier to see from the outside of the car. Look in the windshield on the outside of the car with a flashlight and look inside and see if you can see crayons. Try to get them out, right? But if they fell down further, what happens is they'll drop, and they'll get around the motor. And the motor spins and hits them, and it really stinks like crayon because it hits them and it gets hot. You might have to take the blower motor out, and then you'll find pieces of crayons all over the place. I'm assuming you got crayons. Let's say you don't have crayons. If you don't have crayons, it's kind of a plasticky smell, right? You could be having a wiring problem. And if you find out it's worse when you turn the fan on, it could be that the wires either on the fan relay that makes the fan have various speeds, or the fan itself is starting to get hot. And to get that hot, the plastic wiring there, it's copper, but it's coated with plastic, will start smelling kind of like crayons. You want to check. And the wires that feed the fan, if they're starting to get hot, could be the blower motor resistors going out, lots of stuff. You get close, you can feel it getting warm, and you know that's a problem. Now, the other thing is, I don't know what kind of car you have, but if you do have a car with heated seats, a lot of time those heated seats will smell like that because they heat up, and then the seat gets hot. And maybe if your kids even had crayons and they wrote on the seat, it could smell like crayons because it's hot crayons, right? So if you do have heated seats, check that out too. Look under the heated seats. Maybe the crayons are stuck under there and they're near the heating elements, and they'll really stink that. So look under the seats with a flashlight too for crayons. Popped Up 013 says, Scotty, what's the best toy, you know what I mean, to drive around with? Well, it depends on what you want the toy for and what you mean by driving around. Now, if you're talking about a sports car, get a Mazda Miata. There's a zillion types. You can buy a new one for a bunch of money. You can get plenty of used ones, and they are very dependable. Get a standard, though. They're much better than the automatics. The later model automatics are okay, but the standards are a lot more fun. Little toy that you can drive that's dependable. Little toy that's totally undependable. Get a Fiat 500. Just like the Volkswagen new Beetles, they're real cute, but they fall apart and they cost a fortune to repair. If you want something that's reliable, get a Mazda Miata. And they're not all that expensive either, so especially if you get a good used one, you can have a lot of fun with the dirt cheap. They're convertibles, and get one that's still got the fiberglass hard top so you can put that on in the winter. And they're fun little cars. Well, if you got a pickup truck, you're thinking about camping, those campers that fit on the back of your pickup truck have gone a long way. Some of them are pretty amazing. They go everything from economical ones to extremely extravagant, insanely expensive ones. Check this one. It's called the Adventure 86FB. And that camper that goes in your bed starts at $33,000. I mean, it's amazing what these things have, if you don't mind spending that kind of money. They're made in Yakima, Washington by people who know what they're doing. But me, I mean, for 33 grand, you can rent a lot of motel rooms, you know? This one has a wet bath. It has 6-foot 6-inch ceiling in it. I mean, it's a real camper. There's no arguing that. Now, if you want to go a little more economical, you might try the AT Overland Atlas. They start at 13 grand. A lot more affordable for most people. It's a nice truck camper with a pop-up top so you can stand up in it once you stop and crank it up. And the camper itself is made out of composite aluminum and insulated. It's not just some cheap little pop-up tent thing here. When it's open, it's 6 feet 10 inches tall, so you can fit a lot of stuff in there. But if you really want to lose your mind, check this one out. It's made by Bond Camper Works. And they start at $350,000. Now, I think that's getting a little bit carried away for a camper on a truck, you know? It's kind of like a yacht on your pickup truck. You can buy a yacht for $350,000 too. You can get composting toilets in it. For that kind of money, you better get more than composting toilets, if you ask me. You know, they're custom made. You got that kind of money, they'll build you whatever you want. Or if you're more like me, you might want to try the 2022 Capri camper. They're made in Texas. They start at about $10,000. They got 4 camper windows on them, beds, 110 volt outlets, and a decent interior too. Hey, if I had a pickup truck, that'd be the one I'd go for. Looks nice and comfy inside. Decent price, not some $300,000 camper. I mean, people with that kind of money generally aren't camping, you know? Come on now. But the world's so crazy, who knows? Maybe there's enough of them. 10, 20 of them in a planet a year that buy them, keep them in business. But R. Abraham said, what's the best way to clean surface ruts from an undercarriage? All right, it depends on how rotten it is. If it is just surface, get sanders, wire brushes and brush it off and then prime it and then coat it with a coating. If it's not too bad, I mean, it's all rotten and stuff, you're pretty much screwed. You'd have to just start all over, start welding steel or give up and get another frame and change the car, and that's so much work, it's insane. But if it is superficial, wire brushes on a drill or anything are usually pretty good as long as you remember to prime it right after so the bare metal doesn't start rusting. Once it starts rusting, you got to start over. So do it all in one day. Clean off a section and then prime it and then do another section. Don't spend days and let the bare metal rust because there's a lot of water vapor in our atmosphere and it'll start rusting immediately when you get down to the bare metal. You want to seal it as soon as you got it clean. Connor896 says, Scotty, lots of love from Scotland. Hey, the land of Scots. Do you have to take your car to the garage or have a fancy scan tool to change back brakes with electronic handbrakes? Most you don't have to. That's just to activate the brake on and off. As long as you have parking brake turned off, turn it off. Most cars, it won't be on. Turn it off, jack your car up, spin the wheel. If it's spinning, it's not activated. And if you're worried, my advice is when you're doing the brake job, take the negative battery terminal off. Got no power and it can't turn itself on. Now, there are some fancy cars you need all kinds of scan tools to work on when they have electronic assist brakes. Mercedes had one for years, and then they gave up with it, went back to normal brakes. It didn't work that well. You had to have a machine that electronically retracted it when you're doing a brake job, and if you're working on it, could have squeezed your fingers. But with most cars, the electronic, they're not that big of a deal. As long as it spins, take the battery cable off and you don't have to worry about it. It won't tighten up while you're working on a car if you do that, in case somebody comes by and pulls it or some weird short. Bebont says, I don't know if anybody knows this, but I got an old Kubota push mower. The last owner ran out of oil, it seized up. I got it unstuck after 10 minutes. When it gets hot, it seizes again. When it cools down, it'll start and run for 10 minutes till it seizes again. What should I do? If you can get parts for it, just rebuild the engine. What's happening is, as it gets hot, everything's swelling up, and then it rams and seizes up. You might as well get piston with piston rings. They don't cost that much. And bearings and everything, because any metal part can do it. Let's say it's the bearings on the piston rod. Well, if the bearings get hot, they get so hot, then it can't move anymore and it seizes up. I don't know if you want to go through all that trouble with an old motor like that, but I mean, if you can get the parts cheap enough, what the heck? Take it apart, get a rebuild kit. Get pistons with rings and bearings and just rebuild the whole thing. They're such simple little machines. They're easy to work on. It's not like you need a lot of special tools you can do with screwdrivers and pry stuff on and off. If you want to try to fix it, you know, go ahead and do it. But the other thing is when you do take it apart, look at the inside of the cylinder and see if it's smooth or if it's all scored up. If it's all scored up, you're wasting your time because then you'd have to have it bored out, get oversized pistons. I doubt if anybody's going to do that problem for an old engine like that. Once you take it apart, you see the inside of the cylinder walls are all scored and jagged, and you put your finger in there rough, just forget it and junk the thing. It's not worth it. Unless you got a friend in a machine shop, you know, that likes toying around, he'll bore it out, and then if you can get oversized pistons, but it's an awful lot of work for a whole little motor. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.